Have you ever felt that people come to you only when they need something, leaving you wondering if they actually care about you or just what you can do for them? Have you ever canceled your own precious plans, your rest, your sleep, or your peace, just to help someone who forgets you the moment they are done? If you have felt this heaviness in your chest, then you must listen to this story until the very end. It is because sometimes life teaches us the hardest lessons through the people we love the most. Before we begin, ask yourself one question. When was the last time you said no without feeling guilty? Keep that answer in your mind as we step into the world of a man who forgot how to value himself. Once in a peaceful little town, surrounded by long green fields and calm old houses, there lived a man named Daniel. Everyone in the town knew him well. In fact, they relied on him as if he were a part of the town's foundation. If someone's bicycle chain broke, they shouted for Daniel. If someone needed help carrying heavy boxes, they knocked on Daniel's door without hesitation. And if a lonely person needed someone to talk to, they went straight to Daniel's house. He never said no, for he always smiled and said, "Of course, I will help." He believed that helping others made him a better person, and people praised him for his kindness, calling him the saint of the village. But slowly, without realizing it, Daniel's life stopped belonging to him, and he became a ghost in his own story. His garden remained half-cleaned and overgrown with weeds. His windows were broken and letting in the cold drafts, and his roof desperately needed repairs. His own problems were piling up like a mountain, but instead of fixing them, he was out in the town fixing everything for everyone else. Every night he came home covered in dirt and sweat, aching in his bones. His mother looked at him with tired, sorrowful eyes and said, "Daniel, my dear boy, you help everyone, but why does no one ever help you?" Daniel always gave the same small, worn-out smile and replied, "It is all right, Mom, for one day people will remember my kindness." But as the seasons changed and years passed, that day never came. Do you know someone like Daniel? Or perhaps, are you the Daniel in your own life? If you are, pay close attention to what happened next, because nature has a way of forcing us to see what we refuse to acknowledge. One evening, the sky turned unnaturally dark, and heavy winds started blowing with a frightening howl. The townspeople rushed to protect their gardens and belongings before the storm came, locking their doors and securing their homes. Daniel also ran out, but tragically, not to save his own things. He went straight to help his friend Oliver, whose expensive tools and equipment were still lying outside in the open. They worked fast, covering everything with thick cloths and moving heavy items into the shed while the thunder rumbled above them. But while Daniel was saving Oliver's possessions, his own garden furniture was still outside, his delicate plants were still uncovered, and his wooden boxes were still open to the sky. And then the storm hit with a fury that shook the ground. Rain poured heavily, and the wind whipped through the town like a wild beast. By the time Daniel finally reached his own home, soaked to the bone and shivering, almost everything in his garden was ruined. He sat on the front steps, rain dripping from his face, staring at the muddy, destroyed mess that used to be his peaceful garden. His mother placed a warm towel on his trembling shoulder and said quietly, "Daniel, today you saved everyone's things except your own." Daniel did not reply, but inside him, something finally broke, snapping like a dry twig under a heavy boot. Have you ever reached that breaking point where your heart simply refuses to take any more burden? That is exactly where Daniel stood. The next morning, tired, confused, and feeling a deep hollow in his chest, he walked to the edge of the town to meet old Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris was a wise retired teacher who lived in a small cottage near the river and was known for seeing things others missed. Daniel sat down beside him and said, "Sir, I do not understand what I am doing wrong. I help everyone, but I feel empty. I feel tired, not from work, but from people. Why does it feel like kindness is breaking me?" Mr. Harris watched the river move slowly and asked a question that changed everything. "Daniel, look at this river. It gives water to trees, to birds, to animals, and to farms. But when it rains too much, and the river forgets its path, what happens? Daniel thought for a moment and said, "It floods, and it destroys everything in its wake." "Exactly," Mr. Harris said with a grave nod. "Kindness without boundaries becomes self-destruction. You are kind, Daniel, but you have no limits. You run everywhere for everyone, but nowhere for yourself. You think saying no is wrong, but sometimes saying no is the most honest form of self-care." Daniel listened carefully as Mr. Harris continued, giving him a challenge that terrified him. For the next 7 days, do not say yes immediately. When someone asks for help, pause and ask yourself, will helping them harm me? Will I lose time, peace, or energy I need for myself? If the answer is yes, then say, "Not today. Try this, Daniel," and you will see what happens. Could you do what Mr. Harris suggested? Could you look a friend in the eye and say, "Not today"? Let us see if Daniel had the courage. The next morning felt different, and the air was thick with tension. Around noon, Oliver rushed to Daniel, out of breath, and said, "Daniel, please help me move a heavy box right now. I need you." Daniel looked at his own broken fence that had needed repair for months, letting in stray animals. His heart, conditioned to please, wanted to say yes, but he remembered Mr. Harris's words. He breathed in slowly, his hands shaking slightly, and said, "Oliver, I am sorry. Today, I need to fix my own fence. I can help you later, perhaps next week, but not today." Oliver stared at him in shock, his mouth hanging open. "You are saying no. But Daniel, you never say no." Daniel nodded quietly, standing his ground. Oliver left, looking upset and confused, and Daniel felt a sharp pang of guilt, but he stayed focused on his task. Within a few hours, the fence that had been broken for months finally stood strong again. For the first time in a long time, Daniel felt a small, warm sense of pride in taking care of his own life. The next day, 2 neighbors came for small favors, asking for help with carrying shopping bags and fixing a wobbly chair, but Daniel politely refused and explained he was busy with his own work. The town began to whisper. People were confused. Some were even annoyed that their convenient helper was no longer available on demand. But that evening, instead of feeling tired and used, Daniel felt light and calm, and a quiet peace filled his heart. On the 4th day, the sky turned gray again, and another round of heavy rain poured down. This time, Daniel's roof started leaking, water dripping onto his floor. He looked outside, waiting for someone to knock on his door like he always knocked on theirs, waiting for someone to return the favors he had granted for years. But no one came, not a single person. He could have been angry. He could have cried about the unfairness of it all, but instead, he felt something new, strength. He realized that waiting for others to save him was a waste of time. He picked up his tools and fixed the roof himself. It took time, it took patience, and it was hard work. But when he finished, he sat under his repaired roof, dry and safe, and whispered to himself, "So, this is what it feels like to depend on myself." Days turned into weeks, and slowly Daniel became a different man. He stopped running everywhere like a servant. The moment someone called his name, he stopped sacrificing his sleep and his peace for people who never really cared. He began waking up early to take care of his garden. He cleaned his house until it sparkled, and he invested time in himself. And then, something unexpected happened. People started respecting him more. Oliver began solving his own issues instead of depending on Daniel. And neighbors stopped calling for every little thing, realizing Daniel's time was valuable. The town was still friendly, but people no longer treated Daniel like a tool they could use any time they pleased. Daniel's house looked better. His garden grew beautifully with vibrant flowers, and his face looked fresher and younger. For the first time in years, he laughed without feeling tired. He was no longer the man who was always available for everyone. He was the man who valued himself. One afternoon, Mr. Harris visited Daniel. He looked at the healthy plants, the neat yard, and the peaceful smile on Daniel's face. He asked softly, "So, Daniel, did the world fall apart when you stopped saying yes to everyone?" Daniel smiled, a genuine bright smile, and said, "No, sir. In fact, my world finally started coming together." Mr. Harris nodded with a gentle smile and said, "When you stop saying yes to everyone, you finally say yes to yourself, and that is when life begins to change." So, my friend, are you like Daniel? Do you give too much until you are empty? Do you say yes even when it hurts your soul? Remember this saying: saying no does not make you selfish, it makes you strong. It means you are choosing peace, not pressure. Your time, your mind, and your heart are precious treasures. Protect them, because the world will respect you only when you start respecting yourself. If this story touched your heart, do not keep it to yourself. Share this with a friend who needs to hear this message today, and tell me in the comments, what is one thing you will say no to this week to protect your peace? Remember, your new life begins the moment you set a boundary. Do not forget to subscribe and press bell icon so you never miss any video.